Welcome back to the Plan Your Federal Retirement podcast. I'm your host, Micah Shilanski, and today we're going to be jumping into some really good questions that we get. Starts off with early in retirement, but also that longevity planning into retirement. And how do you balance these worlds, right? How do you balance decisions that are going to affect you, 30, 40 years from now and making the right ones today? It'd be really complicated. So with that, I wanted to invite on my dad, Floyd Shilanski, onto the podcast. Floyd's been an advisor for darn near 40 plus years. So you've seen this in many different ways. And so we're going to kind of dive into that. Pops, thanks for joining us.
My pleasure, son. Happy to be here. It's interesting. Like we were talking earlier this morning where I had an almost empty calendar. I had 3 emergency phone calls this morning, all around longevity, all around money, and several conversations over the last week or so talking about Social Security and will it be there or not be there. But I think at this stage, it's always interesting when we get back to the first part of a year or the closing part of a year, everyone gets more excited about the dollar signs. So talking about these things today, I think is very, very timely, son.
It is. And one of the things that as a pre-retiree and as an early retiree, you have to figure out is how do you make a distribution strategy, which is not only going to last your entire life, not only going to take care of your survivor, but make sure there's money on the back end to take care of you. But you can't make sure there's too much money on the back end, because what does that mean? That means you didn't have enough to do the things that you wanted to do while you could do them, right? So it's this weird aspect of a balancing act that we have to make. And listen, I just finished doing this long YouTube video, so you guys can go and watch it, about distribution strategies with the TSP and kind of the Goldilocks and where's the middle ground that you need to be. So we won't talk about it on this podcast. Again, it's a YouTube video. It's going to be out there. You guys can jump into that. But Pops, let's kind of talk about this. Let's first, from the retiree standpoint, the aging in place standpoint, let's back it up to kind of the pre-retirement mode. So one of the things that you kind of made as we were kind of pre-gaming, sharing with me an experience you had with your client, is they're going to move into a 55 plus community. But one of the things, whenever that comes up, we always got to remind our clients that's probably not your last move.
It's not one and done. I can remember, Micah, 30 years ago when I retired, I went to buy my last final home. 30 years ago, I said, yeah, that makes sense. Ratchet forward 30 years ago, I don't think I've got one client that bought the last final home. And the reality is, what I have found, there's at least 3 more moves. In the state of Alaska, we get so many people are going outside the state of Alaska because they're tired of the snow, they're tired of the dark, they're tired of the ice. Okay. And when I talk to them, I say, look, do you want to golf? Do you want to ski? Do you want a beach? So trying to find that place, that resort type living, I guess. I says, and that's going to last you 3, 4, 5, maybe 6 years. Then as you get older, you're going to go, the kids are a 2-day drive away, or the kids are an airplane ride away. And I find so many of my clients getting closer. Now, closer is different for everyone, but they start to get closer. And I jokingly say the last 2 moves will be into the hometown of the family that you want to help take care of you, or then to the basement of the house where the kids are going to take care of you. And when I mention that, guess what every one of my clients say, Micah?
Probably something to the effect that, you know what, I took care of each one of these kids for 18 years, that darn right they should be taking care of me.
Or, I don't want to be a burden on my kids.
That's right. That's just what my dad tells me. Sorry. Okay, that's fair. Yes, I don't want to be a burden to my kids, right? We hear this all of the time with clients, and it's really quite this loving thing, Pops, that people say. But we need to make sure we're planning to make sure you're taken care of, right? Throughout all, and this retirement, quite frankly, is a phenomenon into recent times. Like, go through all of human history, you worked until you died, right? That was pretty much it. So this whole retirement thing is kind of new. And also, kids always took care of their parents. Well, most of the time throughout civilization took care of it. And so now this aspect of, moving on to this independence in retirement, independence in aging in place, and independence in death, that's different. There's not that much experience worldwide in that.
Asia has a different approach to that, as you well know. Their families take care of families regardless. And we see the same thing in the northern countries, in Norway and Sweden. I have friends in Sweden that say it's a norm. It's almost a compound living. All right. That's not in the United States. We're free and independent, and we want our independence. And one of the most difficult things for a aging couple or individual to do, there's one thing they are forced to give up, Micah, that they fight and fight and fight and fight to keep it. And it is
driver's license.
Right. My dad, and you know this, after he hit bulls and cows, getting him to surrender it voluntarily. Oh, man, there was a lot of heated discussions on that, and which you will have with me, I'm sure, when that time comes.
Well, Pops, for your safety, you should surrender your license to the Corvettes. Like, I'm just saying, there's things that we should do to not biased in that decision, by the way.
Not just a little.
Yeah, those are hard things, though, right? To give up that independence, to give up that control. And it's also in the living side of it as well. Like, where are we going to live? So one of the things is, as we're making these decisions, whenever we're working with people getting ready to retire and we're kind of building out a distribution plan for them, we got to be thinking about at some point in time, they're going to need a large lump sum of money. Right now, hopefully it's for something cool. Hopefully it's for a new RV, this amazing trip, these other things we want to do, but they're going to need a lump sum of money more than likely. Now, sometimes it's not for the cool things. Sometimes it's for assisted living because they're forced into a move because of medical issues that are going to come up. But we need to have a plan in place for retirement that not only provides the income in your 50s and 60s when you're young and you can do all the things you want to do, but is available for lump sums in the 80s when you have to use that money for quality of life.
Quality of life. That's a major question, all right? And I'm having a lot of these conversations with my 70, 75, 85-year-old clients today. Do you want to go to a nursing home? And what do you think the answer is? Not no, but hell no. All right. I want to be taking care of the house as long as possible. Then we get into this whole age and place issue, right? Like we were talking as we were pre-gaming this thing, every time one of my senior clients goes to build a house, I always recommend that in the bedrooms, they plumb in the oxygen. That have, so you get the big cylinders are out in the garage, not wheeled down the house. And of course, now they have the portable machines and all that changes. But if we're thinking through that, so many times, especially wealthy clients, would rather stay in their location, stay in their home, stay where they're comfortable with their friends. Regrettably, their friends pass away slowly and they outlive them. So now they're lonely. So making sure that we're talking, and I always make sure that when I talk to my clients, my retirees especially, is that friendship, that connection, that bonding is so important. And we see study after study after study coming up with that. But the cash flow, the distribution side, it is so important. All right. You live your life and you work and work and work. And you finally get to that point where, man, I'm enjoying myself. I've got free cash flow. I'm going, I'm traveling. But now, like a Fed, when they retire, their taxable income gets shrunk by what? 70%? Are they ready for that?
Well, what do you mean they're taxable? I disagree with that. Their taxable income does not shrink by 70%, right? Because most of our Feds that go to retire, right, they want to retire with 100% of what they're spending today.
Exactly.
And if their pension is taxable, their Social Security is taxable, their TSP is taxable, their 401k is taxable because they don't have that tax-free money, their taxable income doesn't shrink by that. And so we got this same big tax burden.
Right. Exactly. But you hit on the number. They want to spend the same thing they were spending the day they retired while they were still working. And so many people had this misconception of that number is going to be smaller. All right. So they save for a smaller number. And you and I and the whole team, we talk about, I want to know what you're spending, not your budget. I want to know what your spending plan is. If you're spending $150,000 today, if that's the number, you want to spend that in retirement, even though your pension may be 50. So there's that gap, as we talk about a lot in the seminars that we do. How do we solve for the gap? And that's where that distribution plan is so important.
Yeah, distribution, when we turn on Social Security, all of those things kind of come into play right there, right? The other thing is we're talking about longevity and choosing where we want to retire at. Think of services as well, right? We have some clients that want to be in more remote places. They want to be able to live there, which that's fantastic. But more remote places means there's less services available. So as we age and we need more help, we might have to be making a bigger move. I have other clients that want to intentionally move to an area that's, close to an airport, close to good medical services, but also has other services that as they age in place, there's plenty of facilities that can accommodate them in their home. If you don't have that, like we have that a lot in Alaska, where people live in places that their community cannot support that, and we're planning on moving, right? Now we need to move before they have to move, and that's always the tricky one. What are things that we need to see? The biggest one, Pops, I'm looking at for clients is mobility and cognitive ability, right? Those are the two biggest things before we're doing a move. If we start having things that have mobility issues, we probably need to start looking at making a move to a more age-in-place facility. Let's get ahead of this while you're still mobile. Don't wait till the time where you're not mobile or you have a lot of cognitive issues, because now how are you going to make that move? This just became so much more challenging.
Your retirement should be the most exciting next chapter of your life. But that doesn't happen by accident. That happens with you taking the careful time, consideration, and planning to make sure you get all of your retirement. And I gotta say, that's one of the things I love about my job is being able to sit down with federal employees, be able to look out in the future with them, find out what that ideal life is gonna look like, and then how do we plan for that today? What are the tweaks we need to make in your life to make sure you're getting the most out of your benefits? Whether it's understanding your federal pension and making sure you get paid for all the years you're supposed to. When do we turn on Social Security? 62, FRA, 70 and change? How do RMDs affect our taxes? What's the best way to maximize our TSP so we never outlive our money, but enjoy a great lifestyle along the way? These are just but a handful of the questions that you need to make sure you're answering as you're preparing for your retirement. Our team specializes in helping one-on-one federal employees achieve their retirement goals and answering those questions and so much more. So if you've ever wondered what the answers to those questions are, then now's the time to make your appointment to meet with one of our specialists today. The best way to do that is go to planyourfederalretirement.com/call. That's planyourfederalretirement.com/call, and you can book your consultation to sit down with one of our specialists in your federal employee benefits and financial planning to make sure you're getting the most out of your benefits. This is the time that you have to make sure you're dotting the I's and crossing the T's to get all of the money that you've earned for your retirement. So take that action today, sit down with someone that understands what you need, what you want, and can help you achieve those goals. Until then, happy planning.
And it's that challenging portion of that, right? So many of my clients are military, retired military, as well as feds. So a lot of times, as you know, that we get this conversation about how the VA takes care of them for whether it's TRICARE for life. But there's certain areas of the country, the VA is not near as supportive. Because I had that conversation with a client recently. Just got up in the state of Alaska. They got great VA benefits, but where he wanted to relocate, we have clients that all I hear is how negative the VA support is. So I had to have that conversation. And his face was like, "What do you mean I don't get the same care?" When you go down and you spend your 2 or 3 months there, go visit the VA center. You tell me and come back. And he come back and they changed it. That town got a red X on it and they moved and they started looking someplace else, primarily because of that. These are the things so many times we don't think about when we get ready to retire. We think it'll be the same, all right? Or I'm going to move outside the state of Alaska so my cost of living will go down. Will it? All these little things come to play with that. And as you know, I've always recommended to my clients that when you get ready to move, before you retire, go spend time. Rent before you buy. Stay in the town. San Antonio, you have North Sector, South Sector, East and West. Probably all towns do. But which area do you want to be at? Well, my church. Great. Go to the congregation. Go to church. Do you fit in with the clique? Because so many time retirees, they get this bond, and it's hard to let someone come into the bond. So all of what you think you'll have doesn't exist. Let's find out before we plop down a ton of money to buy that last and final retirement home that we wanted so much for.
This renting aspect of it is really hard for people to, especially if they've owned their own home for a long time. It's kind of hard to swallow. We have this perception in America that renting is throwing away money. I don't agree to that. Renting is a tool, just like any other tool. When used appropriately, it can be a good thing. When used inappropriately, it could be not such a good thing. But we've seen so many clients move to an area, Pops, just what you're saying, and then want to relocate from that area. And now we're spending tens of thousands of dollars in order to potentially hundreds of thousands of dollars to move locations in a short period of time, where if they'd have showed up and rented. Now, is renting convenient all the time? No. What are you going to do with your stuff? And you got a dog and all these other things to do. I'm not saying it's the most convenient option, but sometimes it's a good option that we at least need to consider as we're moving into there.
VRBOs today, and those type things take a lot of that risk away, or some of that risk away. I can't say a lot, but as you're talking about that last final home, I remember, and the client's deceased now, so I'll talk about it just a minute. He left Alaska, moved down to Oregon, all right, and a big city by the river, and this was his dream. So he had this lot, and he built this great house, and for the first year it was great. The second year was great. I remember the phone call when he called, and I could hear water running. I go, "Bob, what's going on?" "You know that river I live by?" It's 2 inches away from flooding my house. I'm moving. It's like, what? I mean, but these are the type things that these stories, and I know, Micah, you tell a lot of stories. And if you listen to the podcast that I do on Social Security, I tell a lot of stories. Why? It's the stories that hopefully people will resonate with. What you and I are talking about today, they're going to put it in their own perspective, agree or disagree, but it'll be their own perspective. But it's the stories. And the beauty of what you and I have done, or what I've done for the last 40 plus years, is I got a lot of stories. I've got a lot of people that have tried and moved, and we know kind of what to expect. And I know, and I'm sure you're seeing that today with your clients that are retiring.
So, Pops, as we kind of rewind this clock just a little bit and saying, going from the, what do you need to look at when you're just about to kind of do an age in place thing to moving before you're kind of have to move, getting that, we get down to the just early retiree or the pre-retiree mode. We hinted at this, but this really comes into question a lot of being intentional in your distribution planning, right? Now, again, I mentioned there's a YouTube video I did kind of breaking down some different options that you guys have, but this is about really good goal setting whenever we're talking distribution planning. How much can you, dare I say, safely try to withdraw from your money? It's not putting too much risk that's out there, but you're taking enough out to live today and not having too much going to go to the kids tomorrow. And that really comes down to, number one, good cash flow planning. Knowing how much money you need in order to do the things that you want to do. What does it cost to pay the bills? What does it cost to do the things today? How much do I want to spend in trips and travel? What do I want to do for the kids and grandkids, and kind of mapping those things out, but also earmarking for those big what ifs. So, Pops, in your experience and your stories that you have from doing this over 40 years, like, what are some of those big things that could happen that could cause us unintentionally to draw large amounts of money out of our retirement accounts?
Mike, a family is so important to both of us. And then one of the things that I see a lot of my clients do, one of their children go through a divorce. They step up, fund it. Kids, grandkids have medical issues. They want to step up and they want to fund it. They want to help the grandkids university, help the grandkids buy the first house. So I don't see a lot coming down to the first generation. I do see a lot of people want to go to the second generation. One of my 911 calls this morning was a good client, doesn't have a ton of money, but her good friend has to have all of her teeth removed. She's broke, doesn't have any money. So she wants, Floyd, I want to advance this. I'm paying it forward. All right. We hadn't anticipated this drawdown, but it's so important to her. So now we're going to kind of balance things out to come back and say, if that's what she wants to do, by all means, how do we facilitate doing that? Conversely, one of our clients, she's a widow, lost her husband 3 years ago, is in Florida, found a trailer she wants, all right, just to get out of the cold. So now how are we going to facilitate doing that? But these unexpected big expenses, one of the things I always ask my clients after we go through the cash flow and, in the chit chat, anything you're anticipating spending money on in the future. Maybe it's a car, maybe it's a holiday, maybe it's a trip. 50th wedding anniversary that the kids don't pay for. And they have to write the big check to do that.
What do you mean the kids don't pay for? You did not pay for that. Like, we cut the checks on that one. So I just want to, maybe get a little credit for that one for being great kids.
Anyway, yeah, I don't disagree with that. But that's a joke, a running joke. But what we look at is trying to anticipate. And and I know that when clients don't tell you there's something out there that they're thinking that we need to try to find out, kind of anticipating that thing. All right. So I think that's crucial. Whoever you're working with, a good advisor should always be looking out over the horizon what might be coming down the path. One of the things that I've always done with my clients, I ask what their savings accounts are versus the investments. And the investments we see, of course. And when I see the savings account start to go down, there's a reason. All right. And the reason is they're probably overspending or their distribution rate isn't quite enough. So that allows me to know that I've got to kind of be ready for an additional drawdown. So instead of $10,000 a month, looks like they're going to need 12 or 13. So it's not a surprise when they come and say, Floyd, I need a little bit more per month.
Yeah. And so having that flexibility, the way I like to compare this, Pops, it's a thought I've been kind of noodling around for a little while is people going to retire, let's say they retire at 57, 62, whatever that number is, you're going to live another 30, 40 years into retirement. Imagine rewinding that clock at your retirement age by 30 years. You go from 60 to 30 years old. At 30 years old, could you have imagined how your life has changed for the last 30 years? No. where you've spent money, how life has changed. Like if you go back to your 30-year-old self 30 years ago, you're like, wow, this was the plan. And then life happens and it's going to be slightly different. Expenses are different. Kids are different. These needs that you have are different. And wants you have are different. That's how we need to approach retirement as well, is for the next 30 years, it's not going to be exactly what you thought it was going to be because you're going to change over that 30 years, right? And so during that retirement, you need that flexibility to make sure that you're taken care of. So whatever distribution plan that you decide to take, whatever approach you decide to do, make sure you're not permanently locked into things, right? That's where I start getting a little concerned. People start locking up all of their money. They're very restricted in how their distributions are. There maybe are some pros to that, but there's definitely some cons that are there. And it kind of raises up some of my red flags.
Having liquidity is important, Micah. The cash flow is important, but as you said earlier, there'll be that surprise expense, that thing that happens, right? So if you have all your money tied up, however that is, all right, and you can't get access to the corpus or the principal, that could create a problem with penalties.
Let's define real quick liquidity versus marketability, right? So many people are like, hey, Micah, my money is liquid. It's available. I can call Vanguard, I can call Schwab, and I can get my money in 3 days. Okay, that doesn't mean liquid. When Floyd and I are talking about liquid, we mean access to money without risk of loss. Money market accounts, right? Checking and savings accounts, right? This is liquid money. I can go to my bank, virtually no risk of loss, and I can withdraw money from my money market. There's no fees, there's no penalties. I get access to my money. That's going to be liquidity. Marketability, that's your C fund, right? I can sell the C fund. I can sell the S&P 500, and I can get money out in a couple of days potentially, but there's no guarantee of my principal that's access there. The market's going to move up and down every single day. So a little bit of difference in these words, but they have massive difference in the meanings. So make sure that when we're doing planning, liquidity, any money we're going to need in the next 3 to 5 years is protected from the stock market. We can't just say, great, all the TSP's in the C fund, therefore it's liquid. It's not. You might be able to access it, but you could access it with risk of loss. And we got to make sure we're protecting against that.
Words, right, Micah? When someone says, Floyd, where should I park my liquid money? All right. I said, high yielding accounts today, you should be getting 3.5%, 3%, 4 great if you can find it. And I had a client just recently say, Floyd, I got this money market and I know I'm getting, 4%. And I go, really? The rates just come down. So I said, well, I'm not doing it this future, but let's take a look at it. So he brings up one on his computer, and I won't name where it was at. And he says, here's all my money, see, and I'm getting this great interest rate. So I drilled down into it, Micah, 0.02%, because it was a money market, right? Now, that particular company had a high yield savings account at 4.
That's so frustrating.
So he set a year in this large sum of money, and he thought he was getting the best rate of returns. So those words, knowing is so, so important. He was embarrassed. I said, don't worry about it. We'll fix it.
Well, Pops, this podcast is all about action items. So for our listeners out there, our goal is to help another 1 million federal employees with their retirement. So we want to help transform the federal employees' knowledge of financial planning. So hopefully this podcast is going to help with this. Also, take a look at a distribution plan. Like, what's your plan and what flexibility do you have with that? I don't care if you're several years from retirement, you should be thinking about this. If you're into retirement, you need to be thinking about these things and how it affects you.
Micah, whether you're in a Fed, right? My market's been a lot of the military. I used to love to get the guys in their 7th, 8th year when they were going to re-enlist and design that and plot that plan then for them. The same way with our Feds, I wish more and more new employees would attend the classes, start listening to the podcast, come to these things. Because the sooner and the younger that we can get people started in thinking about compounding interest, thinking about putting money away for the future, imagine what their future is going to look like a little bit better than it might be today.
Awesome. Pops, thanks for joining us so much. Until next time, happy planning.
The content in Planner Federal Retirement is for general informational purposes only and should not be considered individualized advice. Investing involves risk, including possible loss of principal, and past performance does not guarantee future results. Guests are not affiliated with CWM LLC Investment Advisory Services offered through CWM LLC, an SEC registered investment advisor. Plan Your Federal Retirement is not affiliated with the federal government.